That evening, I opened my husband's laptop only because he had forgotten to log out of his account. The first email in his inbox began with the words, "Will you come to Sasha's tomorrow? She misses you." I didn't know any Sasha. And then I saw the photos. My husband was holding a 4-year-old girl in his arms, and next to him was a woman hugging him in a way that only family members hug each other. He was smiling. It was the same smile he gave me when he greeted me at home. I met Daniel in the most cliché way possible, at a friend's birthday dinner. I wasn't even supposed to go that night. I'd had a brutal week at work, and my plan was to curl up on the couch with wine and Netflix. But my best friend Emma practically dragged me out of the apartment, insisting that I needed a little bit of life. When I walked into that crowded restaurant, I spotted him almost immediately. He wasn't the loudest guy in the room, but he had this easy confidence, the kind that made people lean closer when he spoke. He had dark hair, a sharp jawline, and these kind eyes that seemed to pay attention in a way most men never did. When we finally got introduced, he smiled at me like I was the only person in the room. I know, it sounds like a rom-com script, but at the time it felt real. He listened, asked thoughtful questions, and remembered tiny details about what I said. We ended up talking for hours, long after everyone else had moved to the bar. When he walked me to my car, he didn't make a move or push for anything. He just said, "I'd really like to see you again." And I wanted that too. Our first few months together were a whirlwind. He sent flowers to my office just because. He'd leave little notes in my purse, "Hope your meeting goes well today." He cooked dinner for me, even though his cooking was mostly pasta and Jared sauce. My friends adored him. My parents actually thanked me for finally dating a good guy. After years of disappointing relationships, Daniel felt like a blessing I didn't deserve. Looking back, that's probably why I ignored the first red flags, like the time I went out for drinks with coworkers after a late meeting. And he texted me 8 times in an hour, asking where I was, who I was with, when I'd be home. When I got back, he was waiting outside my apartment building, leaning against his car, arms crossed. At the time, I thought, wow, he really cares. He worries about me. He said he just wanted to make sure I was safe. It felt protective. Almost romantic. Or the time I posted a picture with my college friend James, and Daniel casually asked, "So, you've never hooked up with him, right?" I laughed it off, but he wasn't laughing. His eyes were cold, and for a second, I felt like I'd done something wrong. There were other little things. He always insisted on picking me up and dropping me off. He wanted my phone password, just in case of emergencies. He made comments about certain outfits being a bit much if I was going out without him. But he always wrapped these demands in warmth, as if they were acts of love. And I hate admitting this, I believed him that we moved in together after a year. That's when the intensity went from sweet to suffocating. At first, I was excited. Sharing a home felt like the next big step. We decorated the apartment, argued about which couch to buy, laughed about my terrible attempts at cooking. But slowly, the walls closed and he wanted to know where I was every minute of the day. If I didn't respond to a text within 10 minutes, he'd send another, "Are you okay? Why aren't you answering? Who are you with?" If I said I was tired and wanted an evening alone, he'd act hurt, like I was rejecting him. He didn't. Like Emma said she was a bad influence and encouraged me to drink too much. He didn't like my brother, claimed he was too involved in my life. Piece by piece, my circle got smaller until Daniel was the center of everything, but it wasn't all bad. There were amazing days too, road trips, lazy Sundays, the way he kissed my forehead when I was half asleep. That's what made it so confusing. Every time I thought, this doesn't feel right, he'd do something tender that pulled me back in. The proposal came on our 2-year anniversary. He took me to a cabin in the mountains, cooked me dinner, again, pasta and sauce, but by candlelight. This time, and when dessert came, he got down on one knee. I cried, of course. It felt like the fairy tale moment I'd always wanted. And despite the little cracks I'd started to notice, I said yes. Everyone was thrilled. My mom cried on the phone. Emma hugged me so hard I thought she'd break my ribs. Daniel beamed like the happiest man alive. And I told myself that whatever doubts I had were just cold feet, but the doubts didn't go away. In fact, they grew louder. Because after the engagement, his need for control only intensified. He wanted access to my work email. He accidentally read my journal. He asked why I needed to keep in touch with old friends at all, and every time I pushed back, he'd switch tactics. He'd say I was ungrateful. That he just wanted the best for me. That he loved me so much it scared him. And I'd cave, because the alternative was fighting, and fighting with Daniel meant hours of silent treatment, or icy stares, or him slamming doors just hard enough to make me jump up. By the time the wedding came, I wasn't sure if I was marrying the man of my dreams or the man who might destroy me, and I had no idea that the real nightmare hadn't even started yet. The first months of marriage weren't the way I imagined they'd be. Everyone talks about the honeymoon phase, the giddy joy of being newlyweds, but for me, it felt more like a slow descent into something I couldn't quite name at the time. Daniel insisted that we keep our honeymoon simple, no need to waste money, he said, so we stayed at his parents' lake house for a week. It should have been romantic, just us, no interruptions. But I remember feeling strangely claustrophobic. He didn't want me going for walks alone. He got irritated when I read a book instead of sitting next to him on the couch. One night, when I mentioned missing my friends, he snapped, "Why do you need them when you have me?" He said it like a joke, but his eyes didn't look amused. Back home, his control tightened. He started managing our finances entirely. "It's just easier if I handle the bills," he claimed, but soon he wanted access to my accounts too. If I made a purchase without telling him, something as small as a pair of shoes, he'd act betrayed, like I'd broken a promise. The fights got worse. Not physical, not yet, but sharp enough to leave me shaken. He never screamed, his weapon was silence. He'd ignore me for hours, sometimes days, moving around the apartment as if I didn't exist. When I finally broke down and begged him to talk, he'd sigh, shake his head, and say, "See. You can't even handle a little space. You're too dramatic." But then, of course, he'd flip the switch. He'd show up at my office with flowers, or run a bubble bath for me, or make me breakfast on a random Tuesday. It was emotional whiplash, and I kept convincing myself that the good outweighed the bad, until the night everything changed. It was a Thursday. Daniel had left his laptop open on the coffee table, and for once, he wasn't hovering nearby. He'd run out to get takeout, and I was curled up on the couch, half watching TV. The screen lit up with a new email notification, and before I even thought about it, my eyes flicked to the preview. The subject line read, "Sasha misses you." I froze. My brain tried to rationalize it as spam, maybe, or a coworker's kid. But my stomach twisted. Curiosity, dread, whatever you want to call it, pulled me closer. I clicked the email. "Are you coming tomorrow? She keeps asking about you. Don't disappoint her, okay? We love you." Attached were photos. A little girl, maybe 4 years old, with Daniel's dark hair and unmistakable smile. In one, she was sitting on his shoulders, her tiny hands tangled in his hair. In another, he was holding her hand, and a woman, her mother, I assumed, stood beside him, their bodies close in a way that made my chest ache. I scrolled further, and my heart pounded harder with each picture. Birthday parties. Trips to the zoo. Christmas morning, Daniel in pajamas with a Santa hat, holding the girl in front of a tree. I don't remember how long I stared at those photos, but by the time I heard the sound of keys in the door, my hands were trembling. I barely had time to slam the laptop shut before he walked in with bags of Thai food, smiling like nothing was wrong. I must have looked pale, because he frowned immediately. "What's wrong?" he asked, setting the food down. My throat was dry. My voice cracked when I said, "Who is she?" His face went blank. Just blank. Not shock, not guilt, like a mask had dropped over his features. For a second, I thought maybe he'd deny it. Maybe he'd laugh and call me paranoid. But instead, he exhaled slowly and said, "I can explain." That's when my world started to tilt. He told me her name was Sasha. His daughter. 4 years old. He said it like it was just a simple fact, like he was telling me his favorite color. He claimed he hadn't known how to tell me, that he didn't want to lose me, that he thought he could manage everything if he just kept it quiet long enough that I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, and I felt like the walls of the apartment were closing in on me. His daughter. His family. Another life he'd been living behind my back when I asked about the woman in the photos. His jaw tightened. She's nothing to me. It's complicated. I'm not with her, I'm with you. But the pictures told a different story. In every shot, they looked like a family. A real family. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to run. But all I could do was whisper, "You lied to me." He reached for me then, his voice low, soothing, manipulative. "I lied because I love you. I couldn't risk losing you. You're my wife. You're my everything." And here's the most shameful part, a piece of me believed him. Or maybe not. Believed, but wanted to believe. I was so deep in his web, so conditioned to accept his version of reality, that instead of throwing him out, I sat there on the couch, shaking, while he held me and told me it would all be okay. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake beside him, his arm heavy across my waist, staring at the ceiling and wondering how the hell I'd gotten here. Married to a man who'd been living a double life, and the worst part? I didn't know if I had the strength to leave, because Daniel wasn't just a liar. He was something much scarier. The days after I discovered the truth blurred together. I remember moving through them in a kind of fog, like I was underwater. Everything looked the same on the surface. Daniel still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, still sent texts saying he loved me, but underneath, nothing felt real anymore. I couldn't look at him without seeing those pictures burned into my brain, the little girl on his shoulders, the woman's hand resting casually on his chest, the smiles that looked too genuine to be faked. When I finally asked him to explain more, he launched into a story so carefully constructed it almost sounded rehearsed. According to him, the girl, Sasha, was the result of a brief relationship before he and I met. He claimed he didn't even know the mother was pregnant until after the child was born. He swore he wasn't with her, just supporting his daughter. "You don't understand," he said, pacing the living room with a kind of nervous energy I'd never seen in him before. "I wanted to tell you, but I didn't want you to think less of me. I thought if you saw the good first, the man I am with you, you'd understand." It was manipulative as hell, but I was too numb to even argue. Instead, I asked the question that had been eating me alive, "So you've been lying to me every single day since we met?" He stopped pacing. For a moment, his face twisted into something cold, but then he softened again, almost instantly, like he'd caught himself. "I lied because I didn't want to lose you," he said quietly. "Everything I've done has been for us. For us." As if cheating me out of the truth was some noble sacrifice. I should have left then. Packed a bag, called Emma, gone anywhere but here. But instead, I stayed. And staying was like signing an invisible contract with him, one I didn't realize would cost me pieces of myself. The manipulation only escalated. Whenever I tried to bring up Sasha or her mother, Daniel would shut down. Sometimes he'd guilt trip me. "You're punishing me for being a father. Do you really want to be the kind of woman who rips a child away from her dad?" Other times, his voice turned sharp. "You don't have the right to ask questions about something you don't understand." The more I pushed, the more he pushed back. Until I stopped asking altogether, but silence came with its own price. I started noticing gaps in his schedule. Nights when he'd claim he was working late, but he'd come home smelling faintly of baby lotion or with glitter clinging to his shirt. I found receipts for toys and clothes in his car. Once, while folding laundry, I pulled out a tiny sock from his jacket pocket, pink, with little stars on it. I confronted him, of course. He always had an answer ready. "I bought it for Sasha, obviously." "What, you think I'm hiding something?" He'd deliver these explanations with such calm certainty that I'd begin to wonder if I was the crazy one. And then came the subtle threats. Not direct, not at first, but woven into conversations like poison hidden in sugar. You'd never leave me, he said one night, pulling me close. You couldn't. You wouldn't even know how to pay the rent without me. Another time, after I tried to spend the weekend with Emma, he whispered, you know, if you keep running to your friends, people are going to think you're unstable. And if people think that, well, they might start questioning whether you'd be a good mother someday. That word, mother, hit me like a slap. He'd never even asked if I wanted kids. He just assumed. Or maybe planned. It was around then that the paranoia set in. I started hiding things from him, my journal, receipts, even my phone. I deleted texts from friends just in case he snooped again. Every time his voice rose even slightly, my stomach twisted in knots, and yet, when he was sweet, he was unbearably sweet. He booked us a weekend getaway to the coast. He bought me a necklace with a delicate silver pendant. He made dinner reservations at my favorite restaurant. These grand gestures always seemed to follow the worst arguments, as if he knew exactly how to patch the cracks before they split too wide, but no matter how many gifts he gave me, I couldn't shake the image of that little girl calling him daddy. The final straw came one Saturday afternoon. Daniel had left his phone on the counter while he showered, and a text popped up, she's asking if you'll read her the bedtime story tonight. My stomach dropped. I opened the thread. Message after message from the woman, her name was Lena, talking to him like they were still together. Not just co-parenting. Together, I miss you. Sasha keeps drawing pictures of us as a family. When are you coming back? I scrolled and scrolled, my hands shaking, until I reached a photo Lena had sent the night before. Sasha in pajamas, holding a book, her eyes bright with excitement. The caption read, she waited up for you. Something inside me snapped. When Daniel came out of the bathroom, towel slung around his waist, I was standing there with his phone in my hand. How long? I demanded, my voice trembling but louder than I thought possible. How long have you been lying to me? For the first time, he didn't even bother pretending. His expression hardened, and his voice dropped low, almost dangerous. Put the phone down. I didn't. I couldn't. I felt like if I let go of it, I'd lose the last shred of proof that I wasn't imagining everything. He took a step closer. His jaw was clenched so tight I thought his teeth might break. I said, put it down. And in that moment, staring at him, I realized this wasn't just about lies anymore. This wasn't just about a secret child or another woman. This was about control. About power. About how far he was willing to go to keep me exactly where he wanted me, and for the first time, I was truly afraid of my husband. After that night with the phone, something in Daniel shifted, and something in me did too. It was like the illusion was finally gone, stripped bare, leaving only the raw edges of who he really was. He didn't yell. He didn't hit me. But the silence that followed was heavier than anything I'd ever felt before. He moved through the apartment like a storm cloud, quiet but threatening, every glance a warning. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, too calm. You don't look at my phone again. Ever. I nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't trust myself not to push him too far, but inside, I knew, I couldn't keep living like this. The next few weeks felt like walking on broken glass. I measured every word, every look, every breath. If I was too quiet, he accused me of sulking. If I was too cheerful, he said I was hiding something. I started sleeping with the bedroom door locked, though I pretended it was because I was afraid of break-ins. I began making tiny, secret preparations. I opened a new bank account under my maiden name. I tucked away bits of cash whenever I could. I reached out to Emma, cautiously, testing if I could trust her with the truth. She didn't hesitate. You can come here anytime. Day or night. Just say the word. Still, leaving felt impossible. Daniel had a way of pulling me back, of making me doubt myself. He'd cook dinner, light candles, put on soft music, and for a few fleeting hours I'd think, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I'm overreacting. But then his mask would slip. Again. One evening, I got home late from work. My bus had broken down, and I'd had to wait for another. By the time I walked through the door, Daniel was pacing the living room, his jaw clenched. "Where were you?" His voice was steady, but his hands were balled into fists at his sides. I explained. Showed him the text I'd sent. "Bus broke down. Running late." He barely glanced at it before saying, "Do you think I'm stupid?" That was the first time he punched the wall. The sound was deafening, drywall cracking beneath his fist. I screamed, stumbled back. He didn't touch me, not then, but the message was clear, he could. He would. That night, while he slept, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might stop. And I realized with absolute clarity, if I didn't get out soon, I might never get out at all. I started keeping a bag hidden in the back of my closet. Just essentials, clothes, toiletries, important documents. Every time I added something, my hands shook, terrified he'd walk in and see, but Daniel noticed everything. One Saturday, he asked casually, too casually, "Why do you need your passport out? Planning a trip without me?" My stomach dropped. I'd hidden it under a stack of sweaters, but he must have gone through them. I laughed it off, said I'd been organizing. But the look he gave me, a sharp, suspicious, told me he didn't believe a word. The next week, I came home to find my journal lying open on the coffee table. Pages folded back to the section where I'd written about leaving. My blood ran cold. He was waiting in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. "So," he said, his voice dangerously calm, "you've been making plans." I stammered something, excuses, lies, but he cut me off. "You're not going anywhere," he said. His tone was final, like a locked door. "Do you understand? You're my wife. That means you stay. End of discussion." And then, as if nothing had happened, he pulled out a bottle of wine and suggested we watch a movie. The whiplash was dizzying. That night, after he fell asleep, I went into the bathroom, turned on the shower to cover the sound, and sobbed into a towel. My reflection in the mirror was unrecognizable, pale, hollow-eyed, a ghost of the woman I used to be. I knew I couldn't keep hesitating. I had to get out. But every move felt like a gamble, every step a risk of tipping him off. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I'd left my phone charging in the kitchen while I took a shower. When I came back, Daniel was sitting at the table, my phone in his hand. He didn't look angry, he looked satisfied. "I talked to Emma," he said. My stomach dropped like a stone. "She knows nothing. So you must have been lying about where you've been going." I snatched the phone back, heart racing. "You had no right." His hand slammed down on the table, rattling the dishes. His voice was low, controlled, terrifying. "Don't ever raise your voice at me." I froze. My entire body locked up. Then, slowly, he leaned forward, his eyes fixed on mine. "If you try to leave, I'll make sure you regret it. Do you understand? I'll ruin you. I'll ruin your family. You won't have anywhere to go. And the worst part?" I believed him. That night, I curled up on the bathroom floor, shaking, while Daniel slept peacefully in our bed. And I made myself a promise, I was going to leave him. Not someday. Not when the time is right. Soon. Because if I didn't, he was going to destroy me. I just didn't know yet how dangerous leaving Daniel would really be. I thought I was being careful. I really did. After that night in the bathroom, I spent every waking moment planning. I mapped out bus routes, researched shelters, even looked into cheap motels where I could hide for a few days. Emma offered to pick me up anytime, no questions asked, but I didn't want to drag her into the chaos until I knew I could actually get away. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. Smiling at Daniel, kissing him goodnight, laughing at his jokes. Inside, I was counting down the hours until I could finally breathe without fear. I chose a Wednesday. Daniel always had a late meeting on Wednesdays, and I figured I'd have at least 3 hours before he came home. I packed my bag carefully, clothes, documents, some cash, the necklace Emma gave me years ago. I tucked it into the trunk of my car that morning before work, heart pounding so hard I thought I'd faint. but nothing goes to plan at 6:15 p.m., just as I was about to leave the office, my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel, heading home early. Can't wait to see you. My blood went cold. Early. Of all nights. I panicked, running through options in my head. Should I go anyway? Try to beat him there? Hide at Emma's? But if he came home and found the bag gone, he'd know I froze. And freezing was my mistake. By the time I finally pulled into the driveway, Daniel's car was already there. He was standing in the garage, arms crossed, staring at the trunk of my car. The trunk I thought I'd locked. Wide legs nearly gave out. He didn't shout. He didn't lunge. He just looked at me, his face expressionless, and said, "Going somewhere?" My mouth went dry. I was just what? His voice was calm, too calm. He walked over, popped the trunk, and pulled out the bag. He unzipped it, rifled through my things, and then held up my passport like it was Exhibit A in a trial. This doesn't look like grocery shopping. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the car door to stay upright. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper that made my skin crawl. You really thought you could just walk out? After everything I've done for you? I shook my head, desperate. I wasn't leaving, I swear. Don't lie to me. His eyes darkened. For a second, I thought he might hit me. Instead, he dropped the bag on the ground, clothes spilling across the garage floor. Then he leaned in, so close I could feel his breath on my cheek. If you ever try this again, I won't just stop you. I'll make sure you regret even thinking about it. I stood there frozen while he gathered up my things, carried the bag inside, and tossed it onto the couch like it was nothing. Then he smiled, terrifyingly casual. Dinner, he asked. That night, I ate in silence while he talked about his day as if nothing had happened. My body went through the motions, chewing, swallowing, but my mind was screaming I'd failed. And now he knew, the only comfort I had left was Emma. That night, I texted her from the bathroom, hands trembling. He found out. I can't do this alone. Please help me. Her reply came instantly, you're not alone. Tell me when, and I'll be there. I stared at those words until my vision blurred. Because for the first time in weeks, I felt a tiny flicker of hope, but Daniel wasn't done. Not by a long shot. After Daniel caught me with the bag, things didn't go back to normal. Not really. He pretended they did, kisses in the morning, dinners together, the occasional "I love you" whispered like a promise, but the air around him was different. Tighter. Watching, I felt it in the way he hovered when I used my phone. In how he started picking me up from work again, unannounced, claiming he just wanted to surprise me. In the way he locked the garage door and kept the keys on his side of the nightstand that he didn't trust me anymore. And that made him dangerous. Emma became my only safe place. We spoke in code, tiny phrases hidden in casual texts. Movie night soon meant can we talk? A heart emoji meant I'm okay, for now. She wanted me to go to the police, but I was terrified. Terrified. He'd find out before they could do anything. Terrified no one would believe me. The plan we came up with was simple. Emma would pick me up one morning for coffee. I'd bring only a small bag, something I could carry without suspicion, and we'd go straight to her cousin's place in another city. From there, I could file for separation, start over, build a case if I needed to, but simple plans rarely stay simple. The night before I was supposed to leave, Daniel came home in one of his moods. Quiet. Tense. He poured himself a drink, sat at the table, and just stared at me. You've been distant, he said finally. I'm just tired. I lied that he studied me for what felt like hours. Then he leaned forward, voice low, if you ever betray me, I'll know. And I won't forgive it. I smiled weakly, excused myself to the bedroom, and locked the door the second I was inside. My hands shook so badly I could barely type as I texted Emma, tomorrow has to happen. No matter what. I didn't sleep that night. Morning came like a blur. I dressed quickly, shoved my essentials into my purse, documents, wallet, a change of clothes, and forced my face into something resembling calm. When Daniel kissed my forehead, "Goodbye." Before work, I thought my knees would buckle. 15 minutes later, Emma's car pulled up outside. I grabbed my purse, heart hammering, and stepped toward the door, and then I froze. Daniel's car was still in the driveway. He hadn't left, the blood drained from my face. My phone buzzed with Emma's text, "I'm here." I forced myself to keep moving, opening the door slowly. Daniel was in the garage, leaning against his car, arms crossed, exactly like the night he'd caught me before. "Going somewhere?" he asked. His tone was casual, but his eyes were sharp, suspicious, unblinking. Panic surged through me. My legs wanted to run, but before I could answer, Emma honked the horn. Daniel turned, squinting at her car. His jaw clenched. "Emma, huh," he muttered. Then he looked back at me. "You really think she can save you?" Something inside me snapped. Weeks of fear, silence, walking on eggshells, it all boiled over. "Yes," I said, my voice shaking but louder than I'd ever managed around him. "She can. And she will. Because I'm done, Daniel. I'm done living like this." For a heartbeat, he just stared at me, stunned. And then his face twisted, rage breaking through the calm mask. He stepped forward, hand raised, not quite a strike, but close enough that every muscle in my body flinched. Before he could move further, Emma was out of the car, running toward me. "Get in," she shouted, pulling me by the arm. Daniel reached for me, but Emma shoved herself between us. "Touch her," and I swear to God, I didn't wait to hear the rest. I bolted into her car, slammed the door, and locked it. Emma dove in after me, started the engine, and peeled out of the driveway as Daniel's shouts echoed behind us. I didn't breathe until the city disappeared in the rearview mirror. The first night at Emma's cousin's house, I barely slept. My body was safe, but my mind was trapped in the old apartment, hearing his footsteps, his voice, the sound of his fist hitting the wall. Every creak of the unfamiliar house made me jump. Emma sat with me on the couch until sunrise. She held my hand while I cried, repeating over and over, "You're safe now. He can't touch you here." The next morning, we went to the police. My voice shook as I gave my statement, detailing everything: the hidden family, the threats, the surveillance, the night he caught me with the bag. They listened, asked questions, wrote it all down. They gave me a case number, a protective order, and told me not to go back for my things without an officer present. It didn't feel like enough, but it was something. Daniel tried calling at first. Dozens of missed calls. Then came the messages, "You're overreacting. We can fix this. Come home." When I didn't answer, his tone changed. "You'll regret this. You think she can protect you? She can't. I'll find you." I blocked him. Changed my number. Changed my email. It felt like cutting off oxygen, but I had to do it. The divorce process was ugly. He denied everything, painted me as unstable, tried to turn the blame back on me. But with the texts, the journal, and Emma as my witness, his mask started to crack in front of other people too. Eventually, the court sided with me. I never saw Sasha or her mother again. Sometimes I wonder if they ever escaped his control, or if they're still caught in his web. That thought keeps me awake at night more than I'd like to admit. It's been a year now. I rent a small apartment in a different city. It's nothing fancy, secondhand furniture, mismatched dishes, but it's mine. The silence here doesn't scare me. I can leave a bag packed by the door if I want, and no one asks where I'm going. Healing hasn't been linear. I still flinch at sudden movements. I still check the locks twice before bed. But I'm learning to breathe again. To laugh again. To trust myself again. People ask why I stayed so long. Why I didn't just walk out the first time he showed his true colors. I used to hate that question. Now, I tell them the truth: leaving an abuser isn't as simple as packing a bag. It's surviving a war you never asked to fight, but I fought. And I won, and that's something no one, not even Daniel, can ever take away from me.